All right, guys. So now we finished off building that fancy-ish landing page. Admittedly, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. It was there to serve as a little appetizer into working with some of the Divi machine modules that you're going to be using to build out those all-important archive pages and single classified post pages. So what we're going to do is dive in deeper. We're going to start with the all classifieds page, and let's take a look at what it currently looks like and then what we're going to be building. So this is where we left things off, and this is our all classifieds page as it stands right now. It's using that ugly loop layout, but we're going to be replacing that with the one that we crafted earlier. And we are going to turn it into this piece of beauty, which is going to feature not only this awesome map at the top here, we're going to be using our loop layout to very nicely display all the different classifieds on our site, but then also we're going to be using these Ajax filters on the left-hand side that lets you easily go ahead and filter it so that you can find exactly what you're looking for. And that is just the start of it. We'll start with the old classifieds. We're going to build out all the archive pages. So we're going to be building out this for sale layout and the lost and found layout, and then also the free stuff layout. They're all kind of the same, but here on the left-hand column, especially when we come to for sale, we're going to want to note the fact that, hey, this one's got different filters on here because, of course, this one includes prices, while the other ones do not. So we want to make sure that the right options display here and select status, and that's where that conditional logic comes in. So strap in. This is going to be a longer one, but it's going to be very helpful and is really a deep dive on the inner workings of machine and all that's possible, of course. So let's get to it. All right, guys. So now for this lesson, we're going to be staying in the Divi Theme Builder. So if you're not there yet, head on over to Divi and then Theme Builder, and you'll see the global header and footer that you created before. Now, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be adding a new template to address those classifieds. So we're going to create an archive page for that. We're going to click on Build New Template. And now what you need to do is kind of go through the list and see, okay, well, I'm building an archive page. What type of archive page am I building? And we're going to be building the all classifieds archive page. And that we find just by scrolling down here a bit, and we just go ahead and clicking on all classifieds. So classifieds archive page. And that's all we need to do. Now, just so you guys know, you can address pretty much any type of post or category, specific product tags, anything. You can build pages and layouts that address just that without needing to code a single thing. This is the power of Divi, which is extended by the power of Divi Machine, of course. So go ahead and click on Create New Template, and you'll see that your global header and footer is just added there automatically, which is great. And we're going to click on Add Custom Body and Build Custom Body. Cool. So we get dumped out here. And now we need to kind of think about how we're going to build this out. So we need to think about, how was this constructed? Or maybe you've sketched out what you want it to look like. That's a great way to kind of explore different layout ideas is by what's called wireframing. So you just kind of sketch it out. You could use software for that, kind of like we did the custom post type planning. So here it looks like we've got one single column row and then a 2-column row. That's, I don't know, maybe 1/4 and 3/4. We'll kind of play with it and find out which one's the best one. So let's get started by laying the groundwork. We're going to build this top column, and then we'll get to the bottom parts. And we'll add in all the different modules and the content, as you know I like to do by now. And then we'll head over to the styling of that. Okay, cool. So single column row, that was very easy. So now the first thing we're going to be adding here is going to be a text module. So I'll type in text and get that in there. And this is going to be pretty simple. You can obviously put anything you want to here. I'm just going to put all classifieds over there. And that should be clear enough. And then I'll make this an H1 since this is going to be the main heading on this page that we are building. So I'll go over to design. I told you guys that I'm going to be building this one out. And then we'll get to the second part where we'll add all those modules and then style that up as well. So for the H1, we're going to make this a little bit bolder. And we're going to make that text a little larger. So maybe like a 75, I think is good. Make it like nice and loud and in your face. And then, of course, the color, we're going to do our blue that we've been using. Now, I'm doing things a little bit differently than we have it on this site, but that's also to emphasize the fact that what you might be building is going to look a little bit different than what I'm building. And that's okay. It's just about throwing your own style to it. My main goal here is to show you how Divi Machine works. So we've got that in there. And I'll come back here one other thing that I'm going to want to do, I'm fine with everything else, but this row, I'm going to try and make 100%. Well, maybe we'll keep it at 80%, but then we'll make it full width there. I think that works better. And we're going to be adjusting some of the spacing. But first, let's start with this section. We'll go to the background and we're going to use our off-gray color again here. And then that's going to give it that little, just a little differentiator between where we are and then how we interact with the page. Cool. Now let's just work with a little bit of the spacing here on the design tab. I think it's got a little bit too much padding on the top and bottom. So maybe we'll put 20 top and bottom. 20 is looking decent, but our text is pretty bold. I think maybe we should go up to about 30, 35, 35. I'm going to settle on 35, okay? Cool. All right, that's good enough for me. Now you can, of course, add a multi-column row up there, whatever you want, but we're not going to do that here. Okay, cool. So that's our first row done. That was pretty easy. And then we'll get to the second portion. And I'm actually going to just add another section for that, as their functions are kind of separate. And for this one, we're going to be doing, let's think, let's go with a quarter. So 25 and a 3/4, 75% column layout. In the first column, we'll be adding, you can just type in filter if you wanted to. So the filter post module, that's our Ajax filters. That is a module that comes with Divi Machine. So we'll drop that in there and we will start adding some of the fields, but we're going to get more in detail with that. Actually, I'm going to save the Ajax filters for last because it's actually quite involved, but I want you guys to pay attention. So let's get the easy things out of the way and then we'll do the thinking. So close that one out. Now, next up, we're going to put a map module in the next column. There we go. And then when you get started, what you're going to want to do is just give it like a place to center. So, if it's a local community, site or something like that, that's what you're going to want to do. So I could put something like local as a title for my pin. And then on the map here, we can say, well, let's put our pin in Chicago, find, and then it'll find Chicago, Illinois. And I'm pretty happy with that. So check that. And you also want to set the map center. So the map center will also be Chicago. I'm going to hit find. And there we go. Maybe we'll zoom out a bit for that initial view to see a little bit more of the city that we're looking at. I think that's good. So that's it for the map for this moment, but we'll be looking at this a little bit more in detail in a bit here. And also, guys, if your map's not working right now, it's definitely going to be something to do with your API key not being in there correctly or not being in there at all. So definitely make sure that you have your API key in the Divi theme settings. Now, next, what I'm going to want to do is we're going to add, an archive loop module. So we can type loop if we wanted to, and then we'll bring up the archive loop. We're going to add classifieds. That's great. And then just like before, we're going to go ahead and select our classifieds loop. There we go. And we can see that we're set up in 4 columns. That's, of course, not what we want. And just as a side note here, we're not going to be doing this in this course, but you can build a no post layout for each archive loop that you have. So if it doesn't pull up anything, you can have a layout that you designed in the Divi library to show, hey, for example, there are no classified posts. Create a post now. That would be a good use of that. So that is for you to kind of explore. And just, I want to make sure that you know that because of the flexibility that this does offer you. Now, on the loop options, we're going to make sure that only published posts do show up. Our initial post count is going to be, I'm going to put it at 9 because we're going to do 3 columns, right? So just my thinking behind that. And then as far as the categories, we're not going to be specifying anything like that or anything. We're not changing much at this point in time. Sorting, we're going to do date, and we're going to do descending. So we want the most recent post and then going backwards. And on the element options, we can show the result. We're not going to do that. But one thing we do want to do is set how posts load. And now we're going to be using the infinite scroll. So when we get past those 9 posts and scroll down, it'll generate more posts as you go, and you can kind of see how that is working. But we'll test that on the front end in a bit. And we also want to tell it, yes, we are using a map. And then we need to tell it, okay, well, what's the map's selector? Now, what do we mean by that? Map selector is just basically going to be an ID or a class that we add to this map module. So let's quickly go and add a class to the map. We go advanced, and then we just go classifieds dash map. It's important. You can't have spaces here. So if you do want to use something like classifieds map that I'm doing, just make sure to use a dash or underscore or something to connect those two. So I'll come back here to my archive loop. I'll go back down to my element options, my map selector. I will go and put that in there. And then we'll say, show all posts on the map. Absolutely, we do want to do that. You can even change things like the tooltip when you're hovering on a pin on the map or anything like that. So it really is quite flexible as far as that goes. And there's a lot of options, but if you do want to learn more about all the things you can do, check out the documentation at help.diviengine.com. Now, also very important, we want to make sure that we select the type of grid we want. Do we want masonry? Do we want just normal grid? I'm usually a bit of a sucker for masonry, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to change my columns to 3, and that'll give a quick think, and then I'll come up. So I think we're good here. So I'm going to save this really quickly, and I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to close this. Now remember, this is a new template, so we do need to double save. So save one more time. And let's come to the front end here, and let's reload our categories or our all classifieds page. And you can see, wow, immediately, this is looking so much better than it did before. We've got Chicago right here. Now, there's one more setting we do need to set. I think if I zoom out, I'm not going to see any posts. No. And there's a good reason for that, because there's a Divi machine setting we need to set to make sure that that works correctly. Okay, now if I come back here, I am going to go to Divi engine machine settings. We're going to go to our module overrides. And then we're going to select the ACF field of location, and then the post type for map post type as classifieds. And then that's going to be it. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And then we'll go back over here. And now, if I did that correctly, it should be showing up. Okay, well, now it shows my current location. Yeah, okay. And I know what I did wrong here. So I'm going to go back to the theme builder and go to custom body on our all classifieds layout. Now, what I neglected to do was put a period before my post here on the element options. Now, we've got the map selector, classified maps, but what I needed is a period in front because I added the class to our map up here. Now, if you used a ID, you're going to have to put the hash, of course, right there. So I'm going to keep it as so. I'm going to go ahead and save the layout. And I don't need to double save because this has now already been saved once. Now refresh this page, and they can already see I have one tooltip here for Zip, my dog that's missing. And I can keep on zooming out. And now you'll see Google's using that nice clustering. So Divi Machine supports that. And when you click on it, it'll expose clusters. And if you click on it again, it'll expose them some more. So here we've got Chicago, and there's 3 items here. So that is very handy. It's a great feature, and I think it looks pretty great. So that's our maps working. Now, next up, we are going to want to just change some of the sizing here. We've got all the elements, and then what we'll do is we'll start with the filters and work our way to the right. So back on the theme builder, we are going to go ahead and, similar to the top row that we have there, we're going to go to design. We'll say sizing. And we're going to take this up all the way. And now you see that a lot of room is opened up. And almost, I think that's still good. So a lot of room is opened up, and this is fine. So let's open up the filter module here. Okay, so here we are. Let's go. So we need to kind of think about what are we going to be adding here. It looks like we've got a search field just to be able to type. And if I type in mini, for example, by the power of Ajax, we've got a Mini and a Mini Cooper here. So that can search terms. That's great. Next up, we've got different types that we can select. So if I go and select, let's say, houses, we've got all the houses here. And not only that, we do get a price slider here. So that just basically shows the conditional logic that we're going to be building out here. So that's going to be a range slider we're adding. And then we can also say, how close to the center of our pin, so the location where we are. Do we want to start searching? And then lastly, what is the status of the item? Let's rock and roll and build this out. Okay, so first thing was that search field. So let's go ahead and add that in. So the admin filter name is going to be search. And what are we going to be searching in this field? Well, we are going to be searching text. There we go. And what are we searching? Well, we're going to be searching through classifieds. And then for our layout options down here, you can add a custom label to it. We're not going to do that because we've got the placeholder text that's going to be telling people what to do. So we'll hide that label. And the folder parameters will be yes with title. Now the width, you can put two fields next to each other, similar to how the contact form works in plain Divi on the contact module. And in Divi Form Builder, of course, you can control all that fun stuff. Now, as far as text goes, there's a lot of settings in here. We're not going to be messing around with that too much. But the other thing we want to take a look at here is the text. And we are going to change the placeholder text. So we'll say search for an item, ... So that when people come here, they know that this is where I'm going to type in a specific search that I might be looking for. Okay, so moving on, we don't really need to apply any conditional logic to that field since, we will have that display for any type of post type that we're using. We're really only going to be using the conditional logic when it comes to, not showing for sale filter, not showing price filters for something that's free. That wouldn't make any sense. So we want to make sure that we implement that there. Right. So next up, let's save our search field and let's add in all the other fields that we feel we'll need. So on our form here, we've got also the type of item. So that custom taxonomy that we created, we're going to need to add that field on there also. So let's come back here and add another field. And I am just going to call this item type. And these names are going to be very not pleasing to the eyes, if you will, just because I want it to be clear what we're adding and what you're going to do with it. And then once we've added all these fields, we'll go about styling them because, you can't really see that input box there, for example. So we'll fix all of that in due time. Now, what are we going to be filtering here for the type? And that, of course, is going to be custom taxonomy. So we'll select that, and then it's going to ask us, okay, cool, custom taxonomy. What type of custom taxonomy? And that is, of course, going to be item types. And if the post that we're filtering is classified yet again, and then the filter type is just going to be a regular select box, and then the value that we're looking at. And, let's say for price, something like that would be set to numeric because the only input you want to see and filter is a numeric value, but we are evaluating a string. So we will select that one. And then coming down a little bit further, there's a lot of include options, prefixes, all sorts of stuff you can do. You know what's good for that? The documentation. So help at diviengine.com. Check it out if you need some help. And we are also going to show the filter even if there are no items in that filter. So let's say, or in that item type class. So let's say, now if we come back over here, let's say there are no houses in the classifieds database yet. What you can do is you can say, okay, well, I don't want houses in the drop-down list because there are no houses, right? So that's just a little bit further logic that and the smarts of the filters that you can bake into your site, but we're not going to be dealing with that in this setup. We want to make sure that we are displaying the empty filter options because, it's as we're going to go through this, I think will be helpful for us. Now, the range here, we're not going to do anything with that fun stuff. We're not going to be messing with the taxonomy here. And we really don't have any conditional logic to do, or do we? No, we absolutely do. We are going to be assigning a logic ID to this. And when you open this up, it's just going to be the unique ID of the field. This is something that you can just create. I am going to use item and just item, right? We'll just do types. Okay, so types, and then I'm just going to repeat types down here. And the reason we're adding this is because when we are evaluating the logic for other fields coming up, that's what we're going to be looking for when we're applying that. So be aware that we want to make sure that all these things are set up correctly You want to give filter names and all that fun stuff. You don't want to generate other types of field names and stuff like that in there. So we're going to be okay with that for now. So we've got taxonomy. That's a beautiful label. We'll change that label. Don't you worry. We're actually going to disable that label. Let me just go in there right now and go to layout. We don't want to show the label. Let's look back at our layout here. So now comes the range filter, right? So let's come back here, and that is going to be used for the price. So let's add that field. We're going to say main, and this is going to be item price. We are going to be filtering advanced custom field. And then, of course, our post type will be classifieds. And the ACF name that we are filtering is going to be the price of the item, of course, right? First things first, the filter type, we can put a number or a range. And I think that's the one we'll be using because we've got this fancy slider. And we'll continue on to come down to the custom label. Now, this I do want to change, and I'll say enter min and max price, something like that. That's just going to be clear for the user to understand. And then we can go to the layout, and we are not going to add the label. Just kidding. We just added that in there. And we'll go to the range here. Now, with the range, you can do all sorts of different things. And, you can kind of see how, depending on the filter type that you're selecting, there might be different options available to you. The minimum and maximum ranges that we're going to be selecting is we're going to define this from ACF. So it's going to read into all the different posts that they are, and it's going to make the cheapest price the minimum and the largest price the maximum. So that's pretty good stuff. You can also change the step range. So do you want, when people slide this, that it goes up by 10, 50, 100, 1,000? Probably not the best if you've got cheaper items, but if you were selling houses, let's say, or building a housing listing website or cars or something, maybe you want things to go up by like $50 at a time, you know what I mean? So, but we're not going to mess around with that too much. But we are going to prettify our numbers, and we are going to put a comma as our prettify separator. Now, depending on the currency that you're using, you could put a $sign in there, for example. That kind of gives it some clarity as to what we're doing. And, if you are in a country like Colombia that has COP at the end of their pricing, you can put it at the end instead. It entirely depends. Or GBP for Britain, there's just a bunch of different options here. And now we can get down to the conditional logic and expand that for us. Now, first, we're going to enable the conditional logic. And if we kind of read up here about enabling this, is enabling conditional logic makes this field only visible when any or all of the rules on the bottom are fulfilled. Only fields with a unique and non-empty field ID can be used. Keep that in mind. Remember, when we worked on the item types field, we went ahead and specified what that's going to be, right? So we are going to say if the types, which is what we specified before, equals. And now we need to think about that taxonomy that we used. And if I come back here to my site and I go to classifieds and go to item types, here is the taxonomy or the slugs that we use. And that's what we need to look at. So the first one, we need to say, okay, well, if it's a house, that might be for sale, right? So we want the price to show for that. So we'll enter that in there. Then we'll add another one that is going to be for the vehicles, right? Let's go back and just copy vehicles, that slug that we have there. I will paste that right in there. And let's go test this and see if it works, right? So let's save all of this. Let's save that. And then I'll come back to the front end and I will refresh my page. Okay, cool. So we've got a search field here. If I select bags and hit search, we haven't activated the Ajax search function. Oh, look, only bags come up. That's a really good start. Now, if I select houses, for example, and hit search, Okay, so this is actually a really good opportunity to show you guys how to fix it when this happens, because our conditional logic is set up correctly. But what's happening here? I'm going to show you. We inspect the page, and when we expand that hidden field and click here, you can see that the field ID that it's looking for is field_1 contains vehicles. And that's obviously incorrect because we've renamed this field to be types, right? So that is absolutely incorrect.
And this is due to cache that Divi generates. Now, this is not something that Divi machine controls. It's purely a Divi issue. And we've worked with the Divi team to see if we can resolve this. But I think they're holding off until they release the Divi API architecture, probably sometime next year. So I don't think it's a high priority item for them at the moment, but that's okay. We just need to be aware that this happens with the conditional logic sometimes. And the way that we fix that is to go back into our layout here. And then once here, we need to try and encourage Divi to go ahead and purge that cache. We do have a help article on this on the Divi Engine help site that I'll link in the course notes that goes through all these steps in detail. Again, so if I'm going too fast or maybe I am just not being very helpful, definitely check it out. But you need to go to the child field, and not really child field, but the one that's going to be evaluating. So we've got the price, the one that's being hidden, evaluates types to see whether it needs to be shown. So let's go. And one thing that we do is we add another field. And this is all just different things to encourage Divi to go ahead and purge that cache. We're going to go ahead and just call this the DEL for deleted. And we're not going to put anything else in there. We'll save that. And then one more thing that we'll do is we will come here on our field. We'll say, go to the conditional logic. We'll switch it off. We'll save it. We'll save it again. And then we'll save the page. Now that that's done, I'm going to refresh the page, doing everything I can on my part to try and get that purged. And then go in to edit it again. And we'll go in and undo those changes that we just did. So I'll delete the extra field. I'll come here on the item. I'll go to conditional logic. I'll switch on my logic again. I'm going to have to put in houses. And we've already got type selected here, so that's fine. And then also vehicles, right? So let's save that and save the page. There we go. And, again, this is not something that's related to Divi machine itself. It's just the way that Divi handles the cache. And hopefully when they do release the API architecture next year, that would be something that they resolve for third-party developers like ourselves. So back on the front end, we're going to need to, of course, refresh the page. Or actually, let's reset the page. Yeah, there we go. And then I'll go ahead and select houses.
Okay, so now if that doesn't work, we do have other options you can try. Definitely check out the article that I'll link in the description or in the course notes of this video that will have some other things you can try. This is a known issue, as I said, with Divi and the cache that it creates. We will just use that field ID. It refuses to purge. So I'm going to inspect my page. And here we can see our vehicles. And then when we come down here is the other field that we are looking at. And here is the ID that I would need to change to get this working. So field_1. So let's close this out and then go back here to the Divi Theme Builder. So the way that we're going to do and resolve this issue and make it kind of clear what's going on is to head in here. And since it said field1, why don't we try here on the search? And what now I'm thinking the issue is that, yep, as I suspected, here it's using the logic ID of field1. That's some caching nonsense. Let's just call this search. I like lowercase for the first one, and then search over here, because that's going to be the field that we're looking at. So let's put that in there. And then let's go back to our item type here. Now when we go to conditional logic, and here you can see, and now it is kind of clear as day why that wasn't working, right? It was looking at that field ID, and because that was the label for it was blank, and this is that Divi stuff that's happening, this is why we couldn't change or see the issue. So now I believe if we select types here for both of these, and I save again, we will have salvation. Oh, let me reset. Well, I can already see that's working, but let's look. It's got nothing. Houses, and there we go. Rock and roll. We're so happy now that that's working. So don't pull your hair out if this happens. There are some steps outlined at help.diviengine.com and in the article linked in the course notes that'll help you through this. Don't be like me and get stuck on it, and just avoid it to know exactly what to do when it does happen. So awesome. So that's working exactly the way we want to. Let's jump back to the theme builder. And it's time to finish those other fields. So the next field we're going to tackle is the search radius. And when we look here, it'll just give you the results within a certain distance of a search. So like where you're at. So let's go ahead here and in the classifieds, whoops, that's the wrong one. We'll come over here. We'll open up the settings and we'll just add another field and we will just call this search radius. There we go. And let's go down and we're going to select the category is going to be map radius search. So that's one of those ACF features that we've got going on. And the name that we're looking for is location because that is our only map field that we've got in there. We've got place map search fields in line, map radius field as a dropdown, all that fun stuff. It's got a bunch of defaults in here for you. And we'll be utilizing all of those. So no need to go crazy with any of that. Now for layout, I kind of want the label to show, but I want a custom label. So I'll come back up here and we'll just tell it search radius. There you go. So that's nice and clear as to what we're doing to just, help the users know where they're at, what they need to be doing, because it's not really indicative as to what that is. Similar to the range slider here when the price is not as apparent as to what you're looking for. So that is all good. Now, as a matter of just making sure that we don't run into the same issues again, I am just going to put year, radius, and radius. And then that way, whenever we're going through and we're putting any conditional logic in, it's very clear as to what is what on the page. So let's go ahead and save that. And then our next field, of course, is going to be that status. We want to make sure that we can pull in the status of the item. But again, we're going to be dealing with some conditional logic here. So let's hope for the best. So we're going to say item status up here. Of course, we will select the advanced custom fields here, and then we'll go down to classified, select that. And the field we're looking at, of course, and let me just get my big old head out of the way, is status. And then when we scroll down, most of these things make perfect sense. We're not going to be excluding anything. We could put a custom label if we wanted to. We have a select box, and it's a string value. So we can just keep going down. We can put a custom label again for if there's blank or a default label we want to put on, but we're going to be changing that. And we're going to change the placeholder as well. So when we go to select here, you can put it as, let's say, item status. And you can see how that's populating here on the left-hand side. And what we also want to do with the layout, I'm going to take the label off here because now it kind of makes a little bit more sense. I'm actually also going to adjust our radius that we have up here to include or incorporate that in a moment. Okay, so now you're in the item status. We can go through and look at some other things. And once we've selected our different field types here, it's going to only show the ones that you want. So, it's got some conditional logic essentially happening in the background. We're not going to be doing anything here, but what we do want to put is just go ahead and assign it a status. Just that way, if we do want to add some conditional logic later or whatever the case might be, we're not running into any issues. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I mentioned that I wanted to go do some work here on the range. And what we're going to type here, we're going to say search area. And then on the right-hand side for the dropdown, we'll delete this label out because we're not going to be utilizing that one. We'll come down here to layout options. We're going to take the label off. And then we come to select here, we'll say search radius. And you can see how that populates right there. And now we don't need that label that we added earlier. This is just a better way of displaying it. And then just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our filters up and running, almost exactly the same as we've got over here. We just need to do some styling, and then we're going to be done almost with this archive page. So let's get right to it. So back on the theme builder layout here, we're going to go into the settings now. We want this search to kind of be a similar color to what we have as a background there. So that is the first thing, because it's not very clear that you can search over there. So let's go to the field. We'll go to design. And then we're going to go to fields, and we're going to put the field background color. No, of course not. We're going to pick some type of gray, but we're going to need to pick something that's a little closer to the other ones. That is looking pretty close. There we go. And that should be good for that. Now, one other thing that we can do here is we can just go to the entire filters layout, and we can go ahead and go with the fields again, and we can go on the fields text color and we can make it all this blue color, for example. So that creates everything a little bit more in unison. But actually, let's go with our like blackish gray color that we've got going on. And then one more thing, this reset button is not the style we want it to be. So we're going to go to the reset button styles, or just the button styles actually. And we're going to use custom. And you guys know this one already. We are just going to tell it that on hover, we would like that to remain 50 pixels border radius. So now when we hover it, it should be all good. So that's perfectly fine. So that was a lot of stuff in regards to setting all of this stuff up, but it's done now. So we can maybe even, I'll do this really quickly, just add some text here. And we'll just say filter classifieds, or maybe just filters, why not? And we will make this a H2. We'll make sure that the heading color for the H2 is going to be our blue. Or maybe there's a lot of blue here. We'll stick to the orange. We'll close that. We'll pick this up, bring it to the top. And now we've got filters here. I'm going to take that bottom padding for the H2 away. Well, we'll modify that text, but I want to bold the text a little bit. There we go. Bold. Oh, well, I'm on H1. Here we go. Semi-bold. Now let's go full bold. Perfect. We'll bump the text size up maybe to a 32. And, oh, that was a mistake. 32. There we go. And just on the spacing, I'm going to remove the bottom margin just to scooch that up just a tiny little bit. And I think that looks much better. And that works for me. So let's go ahead and save this layout. And now I think we're good to proceed to the other archive pages. So let's quickly just come back to the front. Let's refresh this. Okay. Looks like this search field also needs a little bit of love though. So let's go ahead and adjust that background color for that search field also. And all we'll do here is we'll open up our search field up here, because we're just going to go quickly jack that code we've got here. I'm going to make it still a little bit lighter just by adding some opacity. I mean, some of these things you're just going to need to play with. I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to save that. And then we'll go to the search radius, design, fields right here, and field background color. We'll just paste that in there. And then that should resolve our little issue with the background on that box. So let's just refresh. There we go. Much better. Now you've got the radius here. Awesomeness, man. So good stuff, guys. We are going to say goodbye to the classifieds. So we'll close this out. And now what we'll do is we're going to duplicate this, which kind of feels like cheating, right? But don't worry, it's not cheating. We are going to go ahead now and create the other archive pages for the for sale category, for the free stuff, for all this lost and found and all that. So we'll come down, we'll say classifieds, specific category page for classifieds, and then we'll say for sale. And then we'll just say save. We'll go back in here. And now what we're going to do is we will say for sale classifieds. And now we just need to change up a couple of settings here as far as the loop here goes. So first up, we're going to go to the map here. Oh, that's the wrong one. We're going to go to the map here. And remember how we put that identifier here in the CSS ID on the advanced tab? We've got classifieds map. And now we're just going to call this for sale map. We're going to copy that and save that, because we want these pins to show up there, but not all the other pins, right? Or to have those display or carry over to another one. This is just the best way to set this up. So we'll open up the loop and we will come down here and we'll look at the element options, and we know that it's got a map. And then I will just go ahead and paste that in there, and that is going to be good. Great. So what's the next thing that needs to happen? Well, we need to keep an eye here on the filters, because now we can take the conditional logic off of the item price for the simple fact that we know that this will have an item price, right? So we can just go ahead and disable that. There's another thing we need to go ahead and take care of, and that is on the status. For sale items only have two statuses, right? It's going to be for sale or sold. So what we need to do is tell it to exclude some of the options within the status field. So we're going to say, well, let's exclude gone because that's not going to be there. They won't be free, and you could separate these by a comma. We won't have lost items and we won't have found items, will we? So we can go ahead and save that. And I think we should be good, but we'll double check that on the front end, of course. So let's go ahead and save this. Oh yeah, of course, before I continue, we need to tell it, of course, that this is going to be only for sale. So let's go on the archive loop. We already know it's got the classified, it's got all that stuff in there. But when we go to the loop options, we want to tell it to only include certain terms and then the slug for our category. And if we come back here and we go to classifieds categories, we can see our slugs again. It's going to be /sale. So let's type that in, /sale. And now we see all the pets disappearing and only this category is showing. So that is awesome. So we kind of have a preview that we think things are going to go good from here on. So let's go ahead and go to the for sale category. And that didn't work. But you know why that didn't work? It's because we've only saved the layout. Remember the double save when you are adding new templates? Go ahead and save that. And now let's refresh. There you go. So simple to get the ball rolling on this. We can see that we've got all the for sale items here, for sale or sold. We've got the pricing. We can select the different items. We can select the radius. We can put the status, let's say only sold items. And then we've only got the sold items. So that's one down. So all that pain you went through for all classifieds is paying off now because now it gets easier to do this. So let's continue down and just do the last couple ones. So I am going to go ahead and duplicate the for sale pages. I am going to go back down to specific classifieds category pages. And now I will go on to free stuff. I'll save. And then I will go in and edit the layout. Now, as you guessed it, we're going to first, just as we just did, go here to the advanced tab on the map. And now we'll say free map, right? So we're going to copy that and then come down to our loop. We're going to scroll down all the way to the element options. We'll make sure that the correct map class is in here. And if you guys remember, we need to have different classes here because we're addressing different things. And we need to tell it, okay, cool. Well, we have this. We know that it's classified, so we're good there. But we need to modify the loop and tell it to only include certain terms. So we will tell this to just go for free -stuff. And it should update with only the free stuff. There we go, free and gone. Cool. Now, the last part here is we're going to change the title of the page. There we go. And we need to go adjust the filter. Now, free stuff will never have a price, right? So we can delete the item price along with all the headaches it's caused us. So let's go ahead and delete that. And now for the status, we're going to need to exclude different statuses, right? So free and gone would be the two that we employ here. So we're going to say sold, comma, /sale for the exclude options, because again, if we go to the fields and we look at the slugs that we have here for these guys, we have in the status those values. So actually it's sale and sold are the two values. Now see how easily you can forget what you set up in the beginning. So I'll just come back here. So free, sold. So the other one is sale or sold, right? So sale. Just double check that one more time. Sales sold, good. Sales sold are the ones we want to exclude here and just have free and gone. So we save that. We're going to save the layout and we'll close it and we'll again do the double save. And then we can go ahead and click on the free stuff category. All right. So here we go. We've got bags, we've got all that fun stuff. Let's change it to furniture. There we go. We got all this furniture stuff coming up. That is excellent. And we can see that This one's in London, so we've got that going on. Cool. So let's keep moving on. We're just going to go ahead and duplicate the free stuff layout here, or template is better. And we're going to say, okay, specific classifieds category pages, and it's going to be lost and found now. So now we can go in and edit the body. And same changes we made just now, nice and quick. We're going to go and edit the map. We're going to add free map is now going to be lost map. I'll copy that, and then I'll come back down over here and make sure that we are pulling the right pins for our map here, element options. Go ahead and paste that in there. And we will go and change our loop to make sure that we're only including lost found, right? Those were the values that we gave this. So lost dash found, there we go. They pull in just fine. Cool, so we're done with that one. And now we just need to modify this item status to reflect the correct option. So now we can take care of lost found, and then we will put free, comma, gone for the options that we don't want to be included. So we go ahead and we save everything yet again, and then we can go to the front end. Oh, no, we cannot, right? Double save, always double save. So close this one out, go and save the changes, hop over, and now let's click on lost and found. There we go, lost and found comes up, and we can see that zip is missing, and there he is, indicated by the Z over there. We can make sure that we've only got the right option, so we go with found. We've got a found phone, we've got Chumi, and then you can even add something like electronics. There you go. And then as easy as that, you can reset the filter. And that's it. All the archive pages are done, guys. How awesome is that? Now, next up, we're going to be building out the single classifieds page, and that will not be as intense as everything else has been up to now. So thank you for your patience. I can't wait to see you guys in the next lesson. I hope you guys took all of this in. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of information, but also luckily a lot of repetition. So that kind of manifests itself in your brain, I hope. So cool, man. I'm going to catch you guys in the next lesson real soon, okay?